See, everybody wants to be a king. I don't know why. Because there's not that many kings on this planet. You might have the King of England, the King of Egypt, maybe Dubai, Portugal. But there's no kings in the United States. So when people say, "Good morning, King," that's a joke. That's just a fantasy, man. Society got you going crazy. And a lot of people are stressed out because it's the holiday, it's the holiday months here. You gotta get your weight up, put your money together, because everybody's gonna want to eat Thanksgiving. I really don't care about Thanksgiving. I'm not a holiday person because you go crazy, you get all this money, you spend all this money on these so-called holidays, and then the next 3 or 4 days, you're broke, eating leftovers, struggling, waiting for that next paycheck. So I don't see the logic in going crazy over a holiday. And most of the time, it reminds you of someone that used to be there, and now that they're not. So it's a somber mood. Like, Thanksgiving is celebrating the fact that people came from Spain to another continent, killed a lot of Native American Indians, the males, raped and pillaged the females, and then they said that this is the new world, this is what we're gonna call America. Did not say we are trying to work with the Native Americans on their continent. You just came in here and bullied, killed a lot of Native Americans, men and boys, and you held all the women captive and you raped them. And then after all that's all over with, you're gonna have a big dinner to celebrate that you conquered these people that were living a peaceful life until you showed up and destroyed their life and ran through and pillaged their land. Just as legend says, it happened in Africa. Now, years and years and years and years and years later, people were killed, women were raped, forced to work, men were taken from their families, put on ships allegedly, and taken to different parts of the world to be human slaves. And what happened? They are told, you can't speak your language and you can't learn our language. So how are we supposed to communicate? We're just supposed to work the fields and eat slop. But yet, all these people on Facebook, on Instagram, is saying, oh, I'm a king. Well, the last I checked, kings actually have castles. I live in the projects, so I don't have no castle. And I have respect. So I don't walk around calling females bitches. Why do I say that? Because my sisters are alive, my aunts are alive, my cousins are alive, my daughters are alive, my granddaughter's alive, my baby mama's alive, and a lot of good female friends that I know are alive, and a lot of young ladies that I know are alive, living, vibrant. So I wouldn't disrespect them by calling them a bitch. I wouldn't disrespect the next man by calling him a nigger. Uh, why do I speak like that? Not that I'm white, but I'm just telling you what's right. So, back in the days when you were considered a nigger and you couldn't walk through the front of a restaurant, you couldn't sit on the front of a bus, you couldn't go into the front of Madison Square Garden, the main entrance. You had to go in the back. You had to go in the servants' entrance. And in certain places, you had to use the most deplorable looking bathroom that were named for just colors. They had the white people's water fountain, and they had, as they say, the nigger and the bitches water fountain in the back. But people walk around and I'm a nigger, I'm a bitch, I'm a king. What do you rule? You don't rule nothing. You're still subliminally trained by the smart people that throw out things that you fall for each and every day. All day, every day. They throw out the Jordans. Who buys them up? Black people, Spanish people, the majority. Oh, the iPhone 10 and the iPhones 11. Who's buying them up all the time? The colored kids gotta have an iPhone 10, gotta have an iPhone 11. And then what happens? If they can't afford it, they're gonna steal it from somebody that bought one. Me, I don't use an iPhone. Don't need an iPhone. I work, but my money's not going toward no iPhone. I don't need an iPhone. I'm pretty decent with an Android. But all these people are so happy to call themselves niggers and bitches. And back 50, 60, 70 years ago, people of color, for 80 years, 70, 80 years ago, 90 years ago, people of color was fighting not to have the nigger and the bitch label on them. They were fighting to sit in the front of the bus. They were fighting to walk in the front of restaurants with the rest of the patrons. They were fighting to sit at the same tables as the Caucasians. And then certain places and stores and establishments would not serve people of colors. They would say, "I'm sorry, we don't serve niggas and bitches over here. We only serve white folk, Caucasians. You're not welcome in our establishment, nigger and bitch." And a lot of people of color lost their lives, lost their limbs because they didn't want to be accepted as being labeled as a nigger or a bitch. But I hear it every day. I can open my bedroom door and all I hear is nigger and bitch and nigger and bitch. I'm a nigga, I'm a bitch, 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 I'm a nigga, I'm a bitch. Defined as being ignorant. Defined as being programmed by society. Defined as being programmed by the media. Defined as being programmed by the music industry. Defined being programmed by Hollywood. Defined being programmed by subliminally motivated commercial television. But at the end of the day, the crown means nothing. When I walk out in the street, people disgust me. So this is actually the face that I would love to walk around with every day. Because when I hear someone say, "Hey, my nigga," and I look at them like, do you know what pain people went through 80, 90, 100 years ago trying to fight off the label of being called a nigger look like? This is the face. This is the face of people of color that was fighting oppression, that didn't want to be called a nigger, that didn't want to be called a bitch. This is the face. And everybody walks around proud, calling themselves niggas and bitches, which I feel is degrading and stuff and disrespectful, and spitting on the graves of people that fought against this stuff. But what do I know? I'm just a black educated man that sees things a little different than everybody else. So when you call yourself a nigger and call yourself a bitch, think about those who lost their lives and lost their limbs fighting oppression, fighting against the grain, fighting against the oppressors, so that you have the right to vote, to see, and have freedom of speech, and have freedom of expression. Don't use the terms in vain. Are you paying homage to those who lost their lives fighting, saying, I'm not a nigga, I'm somebody, I'm not a bitch, I'm somebody. But yet, I hear it all day. Kids, 9 years old, cussing. Nigga, shut the fuck up. Bitch, shut the fuck up. SMD. I hear the same thing coming from Oriental kids while I'm on the train. Nigga, shut the fuck up. Bitch, kiss my ass. I hear from Italian kids. Oh, shut the fuck up. Nigga, bitch, kiss my ass. I hear from the Russian kids. I hear from Greek kids. I hear from German kids. What has society come to? There's only a few of us left that actually understands what's going on. Society has poisoned a lot of people's brains, a lot of people's concepts. There's not many black libraries out there. The history of the black man, the history of the black woman. Oh, the history of the nigger and the bitch. Who's following the history? Who's trying to gloat? Who's spitting on the grave of these people that fought for respect? So every time you call yourself a nigger and a bitch and you address other people as a nigger and a bitch, people of color, I see it as a verbal slap in the face. Like I said, when you call the next male a nigger and you address the next female as a bitch, I see it as you just spit on the graves of those who fought against those labels. This is the smooth one, and I'm out.